$200 giveaway at 1,000 subscribers. Like, subscribe and share to enter. Reddit Storytime. Twins of Reddit, what's the best switcheroo you've managed to pull? I visited my identical twin brother at his college where a lot of his floor didn't know he was a twin. That night he had some people over in his apartment and I hid in the bedroom. Note, he has a beard and I don't. While they were hanging out, and me hiding, he announces to the group that he's tired of his beard and is gonna shave it off, so he escapes to the bedroom where I'm hiding as if to shave. We switch clothes and I walk back out to the group with my bare face. Everyone takes note and, while it's generally an unusual thing to do at a party, nobody thinks much of it. After a bit I announce, you know, I kinda miss my beard. I think I'm gonna grow it back. At which point I go to the other room where my bearded twin was hiding. We switch clothes back and he walks back out to the group immediately re-bearded. People lost their freaking minds. My sister was friends with a pair of twins in high school. They shared a single season pass to the local amusement park. The pass has your photo on it. So twin one would use the pass to get in, then they'd slip out of view and slide it through the gate to the twin outside and use the pass to get the other twin in. I have a friend whose kids are regularly babysat by twin girls. He was telling me that whenever the twins would go clothes shopping, they'd go together. Twin one would find an item she likes, so twin two would go into the changing room and then come out to model it. My identical twin and I shared the same gym membership in our hometown for years. One of us would go in the morning, and the other would go in the evening. I think the workers just assumed we were one person that was really into fitness. I dated a twin once and early in the relationship when I was picking her up on a date her sister came out and I was like, hey, and kept waiting. She got really weird and close but like hesitantly. Turns out they were testing me to see if I could tell the difference. Then they wrestled each other in the living room of their parents' house for a solid 30 minutes. It was as awkward as it sounds. I once dated a twin too but never got tested, but I could always tell them apart. I think it helped that her twin was male. We switched classes one day during school. Classmates got suspicious and started asking questions only the other twin would know. Had to switch back later during recess. My father is a twin, and he and his brother were both Royal Marines in the 80s. Back then, the UK used the Polaris nuclear system, and the codes for firing them were based in an underground bunker called HMS Warrior, now Northwood, the headquarters of the UK military. Anyway, they somehow managed to both get drafted to the same base, to do the same job, on the same shift. The job was to guard the safe with the codes for the missiles. To get to the safe, you would have to pass multiple checkpoints, with a different Royal Marine Guard at each one. Well, my dad was at checkpoint 5, or whatever the number, but the one right before the safe, and my uncle was on checkpoint 4. A 3-star admiral came down to run an exercise, went through checkpoint 4, my uncle gave him some smart aleck comment, pissed him off and let him through. The next thing the admiral sees, or thinks he sees, is the exact same bloke, stood at the end of the next corridor, same name on his uniform, exact same height and the most identical set of twins I've ever seen, let alone anyone else. He then proceeds to rip my dad an absolute new one, for treating this process like a game, screaming and hollering at him about how he's going to have his head, not believing his protests about him being a twin, calling him God knows what and storming past to complete his exercise. It wasn't until the following day, when both twins went to see him as part of the closing of the exercise, that he finally realized his mistake. Turns out my uncle used to set my dad up like this all the time. I'm not a twin, but I have cousins who are identical twins. The only way their teacher could tell them apart was by their shoes, because they wore different shoes. My aunt overheard them getting ready one morning talking about switching shoes for the day to confuse their teacher. She thought it was hilarious and didn't tell them she knew their plan, just played along. Far as I know, the teacher didn't notice. Funny enough, Logan has a small scar on his face from birth and Grant doesn't. so you actually can tell them apart due to that. I briefly dated an identical twin. Her twin dressed up in her clothes and kissed me for a laugh. This caused a huge fight because I should have been able to tell, and we broke up. I wouldn't say best, but I almost got the shit kicked out of me by the same guy twice in school cause my twin had pissed him off. Bloke was 2 feet taller than me and a foot wider. He would literally pick me up to eye level before I had to convince him I wasn't the one he was after. You'll have to punch both of us. Wait, what? I think I posted this before, not sure though. Back when we were something like 7, my sister twin and I decided we would switch class. Since that day we wore the same pair of pants, we just switched our shirts and glasses, which were eyesight glasses mind you, during recreation time. When the bell rang I went to my sister's classroom and vice versa. It could have worked if, in the middle of a French course I hadn't started crying saying I can't do this, it was her idea. And meanwhile my sister got easily busted because she started doing my maths, that I couldn't do previously before recreation. My sister's teacher realized I was my twin, understood the whole ordeal, and I was escorted back to my class. I saw my sister on the way and she was crying too. 10/10 would not do it again. I'm able to pull a switcheroo on my twin's iPhone and unlock it with Face ID almost every time. Not a switch we planned and executed together, and not one I pulled off on purpose, but my twin was always dating in high school and going through boyfriends hard and fast while I was too shy to order food for myself, let alone date anyone. I spent my high school years hiding in books and video games while she snuck out to parties and midnight rendezvous with Mr. Flavor of the Week. It being high school, there were always stories going around that started with "Did you hear?" And at one point I got targeted by a few bullies that seemed to enjoy how uncomfortable I got hearing the latest dirty rumor about my sister. Years later I start getting naked on the internet, and guess which twin everyone assumes I am? That's horrible. Which site, specifically? One year at Christmas we swapped clothes and glasses. Our extended family was in town. Everyone, including our parents, kept calling us the wrong names all night. After about 3 hours we couldn't hold it any longer and just burst out laughing. My parents were mortified that they couldn't tell us apart. He's not George, I am. Honestly woman, and you call yourself our mother. My uncles were twins and one would often pretend to be the other during legal entanglements. Sometimes it worked. According to the old newspaper articles I have found, sometimes it didn't. I also went to school with one twin, while his brother went to a different school. I knew they were twins, but these fuckers were exact twins. Did their facial hair the same and everything. More than once at a party or an event I would go up to George and start talking to him. He would be so kind as to let me get well into whatever I was talking about before he would say, you know. George would probably be the better person to tell this to. Jackass, they always got a kick out of it. Names changed to protect the guilty. My brothers, Bob and Jack, are twins. Once, Bob got pulled over for speeding I believe, but he only had a couple points left on his license, so he told the officer that he was Jack and had left his license at home. He told Jack, paid the ticket, and everything worked out just fine. Years later, Bob decides to become a cop, and has to go through a lie detector test, so he tells the whole story to the guy administering the test. The examiner wasn't impressed, but I suppose appreciated the honesty because Bob is now a cop. My identical twin and I are both nurses at the same facility. At that time, we worked opposite tours, so if he was there, I wasn't. I came into work one day after a weekend, and had my run of patients. I passively noticed a patient who was not one of mine, kept looking over at me. About midway through the shift, one of our nurse's aides came to me and said the patient in bed X is upset with you. We deal with dissatisfied patients all the time, but this one wasn't one of those in my care. What could I have done to upset her? Further, it was the one I noticed kept looking over at me. I went in to chat with her and she looked more sad than anything else. She said you were really personable, caring for me all day yesterday, and today it's like you don't even recognize me. That's when it clicked. My brother was her nurse the day prior, and she thought it was me. I saw a post some months back on Reddit that I think fits the bill. I've made up names because I don't remember them. Op, if you read this, please pipe up and correct any mistakes I make. So Op, let's call her Susie, started dating this guy Jim, who she knew had an identical twin brother, Bob, that she hadn't met yet. One day she's lying around her boyfriend's apartment while he's out running errands when the door opens and he appears to walk in. She gets up and starts going over to him, saying hi babe. Meanwhile the dog is up and jumping around him and happy that daddy is home. He laughs and says, "No, I'm Bob. You must be Susie. Is Jim home?" They sit and chat etc. waiting for Jim, and the whole time, the dog is cuddling up to him and getting scratches etc. Susie comments that the dog appears to really like him, and he says actually, no, she hates me. Seeing the dog's reaction to him, she obviously doesn't believe him, but he says wait till Jim gets home, you'll see. In time, Jim walks in and the dog runs over growling and barking at him until he says, "Hey, it's me." Dog stops, sniffs his feet, then goes back and sniffs Bob's feet and goes completely apeshit at him.